the highest bidder.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me again. And before I start properly, let me say thank you to everyone who's sent messages and left comments on last week's video where I was expressing my concerns over the current situation. Lots of people sent me their sympathies and some commiserations and some advice, and that's brilliant. Thank you, thank you. It's all very, very much appreciated. Feeling a little bit calmer about that this week. My wife's having a meeting today to look at how we can or how she can better avoid children basically whilst doing her job in school, so that our elderly father-in-law is best protected as the numbers of cases go up again. So thank you again if you sent your sympathies. It really does mean a lot to me. This week I have a thing here for you. At first glance you might think, oh, it's a Black Forest Gatto. It is not a Black Forest Gatto. It's not even a Gatto from the chateau. It is a Gatto that is actually a chateau, or at least is a castle fortress, and if you get that reference, let me know. So this is a piece of scenery that Mike from Broadswords and Beasts asked me to make a few months back. And I have to apologise to him that it has taken me such a long time. He asked me shortly after I had been working on the Bonifacius Bridge project, which you might remember. I know I still haven't put the second video up, the painting video of this up. Remind me I need to do that. But anyway, after I'd posted that, he sent me a request saying, would I look into making this piece of scenery for him. And the reason that it's taken such a long time is that when I was doing that model, the Bonifacius Bridge model, was just before I injured my wrist and I was out for several weeks. Fortunately not for too long, but for 3 or 4 weeks, not really able to do very much. And I attributed some of that to doing the biro work on the styrofoam, the brickwork. Lots and lots of pen, lots of small movements, and so doing this much pen work on, because this is just a piece of styrofoam cut to shape with the stones put on here, and you can see there are a lot of stones on here, and so I was really frightened of doing this, and eventually I started doing it, and I thought I'll do little sections at a time, take breaks. But actually, when I got into it, it wasn't too bad. I mean, my wrist was a bit achy at the end of the day, but I was able to get most of this done in 2 or 3 days, doing it in sections with breaks at a time. Then based that on the foam core and gave it some texture with some PVA glue and some sand and a scattering of Fuller's Earth cat litter over here, which I like to use to give a kind of rocky effect to show where the loosened masonry has come down. And then Mike wanted, because his armies are based some in deep snow and some in quite light snow, wanted this to have a sort of mid-snowy theme. So I've put some snow on here, and I've done a video on how I applied the snow, which I'm going to run in a minute, and that will be the focus of the rest of this video, because it's I use a technique that I haven't seen anybody else use or post on terrain forums. It's something that comes from my prop making background, using milled cotton fibres, and I used to use it to do icing on fake cakes and things. So I've just translated it over to snow, and I found that it works pretty well. So that's going to follow in the rest of the video. But this is a model of Ringill, which is a ruin now. In fact, there's very, very little of it left on the Isle of Skye. And if you don't know Mike's blog, Broadswords and Beasts, go over and check it out. you may get from the title that his stuff is somewhat based on the work of Jethro Tull, and so Dun Ringill is an appropriate stronghold for his models to be based in. So that's why that came about. Now there is a model of this that I think was done for some tourist board, or it may just be a personal project that is more of a here's what it would have looked like kind of model. It's not particularly realistic, it's just to show you the shape and the form. So Mike actually managed to take a top view of this model and print it out at the size that he wanted, and then I have drawn around that onto some styrofoam and used that to get the shape. And you can see from here there's a couple of long houses, there we go, a couple of long houses there that need to go in this area here, but I haven't done yet. So it's not quite finished. You need to work on those. And Mike uses very old miniatures from lots of non-GW companies, which is very cool and good to see. Do check those out. So the closest that I could find, this is an Asgard dwarf crossbowman, and he can sit on there, so that gives you some idea of the scale of this thing. You'll quite easily get, you know, a dozen archers scattered around the walls, loads more up here, room for sort of 2 or 3 planks deep. And I've made it so that this little entranceway here is wide enough to get a model's base in whatever base you happen to be using. And then on the inside here, where this is actually a staircase on the actual model, what I've done instead is put a slope in there with enough debris and cat litter on there that when I'm not holding it at an angle, at least, you can place a base on there, and the models will be able to stand anywhere on that slope. And then they've got this whole courtyard area to roam in, and the buildings that go in here will be removable. So you can choose to have the open courtyard or to have the buildings in place. So I'm going to run you a short video now on how I did the snow, and then we'll come back and I'll talk you through finishing this off. So here is the fort, painted black, dry brushed, 3 layers of dry brushing on greys and light khaki to make it not look quite so black and white, give it some earthy tones. And I've kept it fairly dark because the snow is going to be quite white, so I want this to stand out quite nicely. And I'm going to put the snow on here now. So in this pot here, you can't see because it's white on white, there's some PVA glue and some white acrylic paint, just cheap. The Works £2 white acrylic paint, and this is about 50-50 paint and glue, and I'm going to put some milled cotton flock fibres in here. Now these are designed for use with fiberglass applications as a filler. I've also used them with latex to create a kind of poor man's foam latex with some slush mold latex. That works okay. In this case, I want to use them as a kind of powder, just to create a thick mass, and it will be smoother than if I did this with a filler powder. You could do it with a filler powder, but the cotton is nice and soft. You get a really nice smooth blend that will flow like snow. On the snowboards that I did, I put quite a thin layer of this over just white painted, so that it just gave a skin. In this case, what I'm going to do is build up around the corners, and then kind of fade it into loose snow as if it's kind of melting, but there's bits of it lying in the corners. I don't want too big a snowfall over the model. So these are microfibers, so they're very, very fine kind of floury, kicks up quite a lot of dust using this, so you might want to wear a mask, go somewhere ventilated. I'm just going to very quickly put it in here, and I'm going for about 50-50 cotton flock to paint and glue mix, so that will end up being about 25% paint, 25% glue, 50% cotton flock, but put in a bit at a time and mix it up so that you can see how thick it's becoming. And if you need to add some more flock, it's easier to add more flock than to try and dilute it with some more PVA. Now you can get these cotton flock fibres bleached, which is ideal because then they're very, very white. And in that case you might be able to get away with just some PVA glue on these, but I wasn't able to get hold of any. I was only able to get hold of the unbleached ones, which is why I put the paint in. I'm actually going to put a bit more paint in here because you can see this is kind of greyish, and I do want it to be quite white, even though it's melting and it's dirty snow. I want it to be quite white, so I'm going to put some more paint in there. Try and whiten it up, and you can do this with normal household emulsion paint as well. That works quite nicely. And actually the consistency of this is quite good. You want it to be this kind of sticks on the stick. Yeah, so quite firm, but I'll be able to tease that into place, and it will sink down and look quite effective. So I'm going to scrape all that off. I'm going to apply it with one of these tongue depressors, but I'm going to snap it kind of unevenly in half, so I've got a nice fine point on that end to get in. You can use a brush, but I find it's easier to do this with something firm. And I'm going to target places where the snow would build up and just sort of dab that in. Okay, and then once I've done a section, I've got this Woodland Scenics soft flake snow here. Which is a kind of granular, I think it's kind of milled acrylic grains. And I'm just going to scatter that on the top. And that will just help it with that kind of powdery, breaking up, crystallizing, melting, refreezing kind of look. And it will sparkle a bit. With the full snowboards, when I was doing the snow, I sprinkled a very fine bit of silver and blue glitter into the top, just to help it shine a little bit, which was a tip that Harry gave me, and it worked really nicely. But with this, because it's not, it's too melted, mushy snow for that, so I'm just going to put a bit of this soft flake on just to add some texture to it. Okay, so now I've gone all the way around the outside. I'm going to start just picking out some of the bottoms of these stones, or the tops of the bottom rows of these stones, where the snow is just still hanging around. So just downward strokes, very gently against the side surface there. You can see just where the soap's still hanging on the top surfaces of those stones. Okay. Now I'm going to start working on the tops of these battlements. So same principle, it's going to be settling in the recess around here, and then I'm going to do some little bits around the edge here, dropping off and spot any cracks and crevices, and any bits of the foam that are still showing through this layer of texture here. Just want to disguise the edges of that with a bit more of this snow. With these bits on the end here, I'm just trying to put it so that there's a fairly thick white border around this entrance. It will just help make the gap in there look even deeper and darker because it's framed by this white snow. And one of the good things about this cotton flock fibre is that when you rake it over the edge like this, it pulls all of the fibres pointing downwards. So you get this kind of hanging, almost kind of icicle-y texture effect, which is very nice. There are probably other applications for these fibres in a modelling context. If you mixed a thicker mix, you could probably stipple and get quite a good rough grass effect. I haven't tried that, but putting various textured filler powders and fibres into paints is a very good way of just breaking up areas or defining areas with different textures, the light hitting them differently just gives you a bit of variation. So it's helpful to have a few fillers to hand just to play with, to see what's going to give you the right texture. Even if you use it as a base for something and then you put static grass or something over the top of it, just having that underlying texture can make all the difference between working over a flat, plain, smooth surface and working over a rough surface. See here where I put the sand on the top here. If I just rake that out, essentially dry brushing with the snow, but that just helps it break up and give it this kind of realistic melting patches of snow remaining. Whereas if this was totally smooth and I just put a layer of this snow over the top, it would work fine if it was deep in snow, but you don't get the kind of visual interest that you get with this sort of breaking up. So it would look much flatter on the tabletop. Okay, inside here, I'm just going to put a bit of snow build up around the bottom of these steps here, and just in around a very few of the more exposed corners. So I'm not going to do in here where it's a bit more hidden, the wall's quite high. I imagine the snow probably wouldn't be blowing in here and it would probably melt. In the final model, which I haven't done yet, there will be a couple of houses, the huts, houses, long houses here and here, so that will prevent the snow from blowing into those areas, and it will also be a bit warmer in here. I imagine people are coming and going, you've got traffic, you've got perhaps animals moving around in residual heat that will melt the snow quicker and turn it into slush, turn it into water. So although it's going to be wet in here, there are only going to be very, very few patches of snow. So I'm not going to do too much snow on the inside. Up here on the battlements I'll do a little bit more. this on this top of this wall here, you will get a bit more snow build up on here, but I'd imagine also there's quite a bit of comings and going on the ramparts. But what's making my decision here is that where all this stonework is quite dark, I want to be able to show these lines of the battlement, define them with the snow just for interest's sake, so that when you're looking from a distance you can see these features quite clearly. Okay, shaky time. So just giving this a light shake. I could sprinkle it by hand. It would be a bit less wasteful to sprinkle it by hand, but doing it like this. And then once this is dry, I'll knock all of this powdered, all of the loose powder off. And I put that in a separate pot labelled dirty snow for use on basing and things. Don't put it back in here because there'll be bits of paint and bits of loose stone and bits of dust, and you want this to stay nice and bright and white and clean. So good. And then once that's dry, as I say, knock off all the loose stuff into a pot labelled dirty snow. Then I'm going to put some diluted PVA glue on here, and I'm going to sprinkle back some of the dirty snow onto here so that you get this breakout scattering effect. One thing I should say about the PVA glue on here, some PVA glues, when they dry, they go slightly yellow. You don't want yellow snow. Well, maybe you do want yellow snow, but on this I don't want yellow snow. So I'm using the really cheap pound shop. It's almost translucent PVA. That will stay nice and white. A lot of the more professional wood glues, perhaps because they've got a bit of resin mixed in with them, will look very yellowy to start off with, and they'll go even more yellow. So cheapest PVA glue you can use, the better for this. So I hope that was interesting. Like I say, I haven't come across anybody on terrain forums mentioning milled cotton flock fibres for snow, but maybe I just haven't been looking for it, so I haven't seen it. I will say that since I did the snow on here, I've added some static grass, and I've added some little clumps of dark moss on here just to break up the monochrome a bit, to give it a bit more colour. In the front here, I've put a little portcullis door. That's a Mantic Games plastic dungeon door there, and on this door that leads into whatever this inside space is here. Oops, let's see that there. No, hold on. There, right there, that door. That's a 15mm metal Pendragon dungeon door, so just to add a few little features. Now I have found something with this which I haven't experienced before, which is that actually the foam core here has warped slightly on the underside. Now I've come across this with MDF before. I've not come across it with foam core, and it's why I chose to use foam core for this, because I knew that I was putting quite a lot of moisture on here with the sand and with the snow, and I didn't want that kind of warping, and it has happened for some reason. I'm not sure what has caused that. So I need to do a solution, and I will talk with Mike about what our solution is, so that it sits flat on the table. And one solution might be to put an edging piece around the underside here and then taper that down to join the table, so it's a bit thicker at the edge than it is on here. The other alternative is to use quite a large, like a bacon slicing knife, and just to slice into the foam here, so that the foam core ends up a little bit thinner in the middle, which will also let the edges sit down nice and flat. So Mike will discuss we'll discuss what to do there. I've left the edges here as well because I don't actually know what Mike's board basing recipe is, and we would need that to blend into the terrain board that's going to sit on. So there you go. Done Ringill, a model for Mike in homage to Jethro Tull.
Down by the Ringill.